Hello and welcome to the Big Life NYC podcast. I'm your host, Roderick Angle. In this podcast, I talk to longtime New York City residents about their strategies for creating an amazing life in one of the toughest cities in the world. Today, my guest is Jarrett Yoshida. Welcome, Jarrett.
Thank you, Roderick.
So Jarrett is an interior designer. He is the principal designer at his eponymous firm, Jarrett Yoshida Inc., which is based in Brooklyn, New York. I think Jarrett is kind of known for taking a Japanese aesthetic approach to interior design and mixing it with some contemporary influences. Was that correct?
I think it has that influence, but definitely even wider than that, just looking at antiquity, vintage, and modern, and mixing that all together, but also, I would say, Europe as well. We do a lot of Asia-Europe mashup, and that helps our vignettes and our overall homes not sort of age. We have work now that's 23 years old, and our clients still love it. And I think that's the one thing that separates me from a lot of my peers is a real strong interest in history. Yeah.
Right. Great.
Nerding
out. Well, I was looking at your site the other day, and I definitely noticed a lot of A-list, celebrity names.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to name drop. I'll allow you to do that if you want.
Mm-hmm.
But you definitely seem to have an impressive list of high-end clientele. I definitely noticed an international approach from your clientele.
Sure.
I saw clients from New York, Paris, Honolulu, LA, Chicago, Washington, D.C. Really impressive work.
Thank you.
Jarrett also currently lives and works in Bedford-Stuyvesant.
Bed-Stuy, baby.
Bed-Stuy in the house.
Bed-Stuy.
So tell us, let's start about, I want to hear the real estate story about your current place in Bed-Stuy.
Sure. So right now we live in a almost fully renovated 4-story brownstone, but when we bought it to start at the beginning, it was an abandoned crack house without windows.
Wait, so when is this? What year did you purchase?
This is 2005.
2005.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It was insane. And, the staircase was
So what was the
missing.
neighborhood like in 2005 in Bed-Stuy?
It was interesting, right? You had a lot of people who had lived there for a long time. And you had some people who loved the neighborhood and were contributing to it. And then you obviously had a lot of, I think, younger kids who are still trying to figure out what they were doing and who they were. And it ended up resulting, obviously, in some violent crime, some petty theft in the neighborhood, which has abated over the years.
It was rough.
Yeah.
Were there restaurants?
There were no restaurants except for the Caribbean hot food place across the street. But
laundromat?
There were some laundromats and a lot of nail salons and some hair extension places.
Liquor stores.
Yeah, and liquor stores.
It
was very different. And now, of course, we have Japanese Mexican down the street. There's the Italian little wine bar like a block and a half away.
It's been gentrified a lot.
A lot more gentrification, a lot more offerings. And I think for the residents who have managed to stay, I know that they enjoy the diversity in the offerings a lot more. So that's been nice for the holdouts who've been there even longer than us to see that improvement. I know that they've really been happy about the increased safety and, frankly, all the other amenities that have come along with some of the gentrification. Yeah, it's not all dark, I think, as people like to make that out, And I've lived in South Central LA, Northeast DC.
Everybody wants great restaurants in their neighborhood.
Everybody does.
And a good grocery store and
versus having zero. Which is what we started out with. Yeah. So that's our story about the house.
So 2005, you bought a brownstone in Bed-Stuy, and was this like this was on the market, and you had a broker taking you around? How did the search go?
There were no brokers. It was entirely Craigslist because there was no Brown Harris Stevens there. There was no agent who even covered Bed-Stuy.
Right.
But we knew we wanted to find something that was going to be affordable, that had architectural, real sort of elan and charm, and that we could put our own design stamp on. I was not interested in getting some house flipper's idea of good taste.
Right.
And then we ended up finding it through Craigslist. It's insane to think that we bought this house on Craigslist. That's what happened.
Sounds amazing. It sounds like you found a place where you could really exert your creativity.
It is something that is more than just real estate for us because of that, right? We had a chance to grow as people, as a couple. We're not separated now, but even still as best friends in this long-term journey to over 20 years because we didn't have the money to do it right away, right?
Yeah.
We've over the years been able to do it. Now my business is more successful. The Airbnb is incredibly successful. And it just keeps pouring money back into itself to regenerate. And that has also been really satisfying. I kept thinking, wow, I wish I had done it like my clients do. I'm going to buy a brownstone and I'm going to gut all 5 stories at once. That's fun.
Yeah.
It certainly, I don't think it's going to have the meaning of taking this long to do it and the struggle to make this happen. And I am, to the point of your podcast, I used to resent the struggle, and now I'm glad that I did it.
Yeah.
I really grew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing. So it's still in progress.
Still in progress because now, thanks to, my interior design business, the Airbnb and rental income, we're going to excavate the cellar, make it fully occupiable, have a beautiful terrace that leads it to the backyard with evergreen ferns from the Northeast, some from Japan, light it up, and really make it have sort of an Amman resort experience and a little bit of, Jardin Luxembourg with all the beautiful white gardens and the rock in Paris to light it up. The gray summer days in
Paris.
Paris.
Like you have your references in order.
We have certainly.
I'm picturing the tear sheet wall.
Yeah, the references are there, and exactly. So we're excited about that, and we'll be commencing with that. We hope in late spring. Yeah.
Okay. So you currently live there. You work there.
Yep.
Right.
I do.
And then you have the Airbnb.
Right.
And then additional rentals.
Yeah. So we live on one. And then when my ex comes back to New York, he'll live in half the office, or I'll live in half the office because he has mobility issues now. The parlor floor is where we have our Airbnb, right, which has been great. It's really beautiful, I think, and we just got nominated by Architectural Digest, top 59 prettiest in the country. That's been lovely.
Yeah, I saw that. So that's recent? That just happened?
That happened in July, and then IKEA came by, and it just posted last week about how Dan and I live in Brooklyn. There are 8 people chosen globally, and we're representing sort of the American story of design anyway, which is fun. And they showed not only the pretty part of the parlor floor, but also the reality of what it means to not work in finance and to have to struggle and save and slowly improve your house over time. So it was a realistic snapshot that wasn't just sort of glamored up.
Right.
Which at first...
Which is rare.
Yeah. And at first I was like, oh, God, do I want to do this? I was like, oh, whatever. I should do it, right?
Yeah,
To be real.
Yeah.
And I think to show that if you persevere and you do diligence and sort of be assiduous about and persistent.
Yeah, persistence.
You can really make living in New York, right? Amazing.
Whatever you want it to be.
Pretty much, right. And then your neighborhood, I think, and you and I have talked about this before, the idea of, your home is your refuge, but I think your job as an agent, right, is how does not just the home, but how does your neighborhood also?
I think that's when I'm working with clients, that's one of the things I pay particular attention to is what neighborhood does my client really belong in? Where are they going to be happy 10, 20, 30 years down the road, And I think that's important for every New Yorker to kind of figure out.
Right.
I found it in my life and you have in yours, and I think everybody needs to find that.
Right, and Astoria has such character where you are. And
I love Astoria.
Right.
I mean, I moved there. I've lived in New York City since 91 and lived all over, and I moved to Astoria about 7 years ago, and I love it.
And it's for
I
you.
think we're there for life.
Right. Yeah.
Honestly,
exactly. And I think that's true for me in Bed-Stuy as well. And and as an agent, I think the neighborhoods and how important that is. It's not like we're living, frankly, in I would say a lot of LA, not West LA and certain parts of Central Pasadena, but there's so much homogenization in a lot of other cities. New York is very unique, at least in the U.S.
It's a micro unique, like from block to block.
It can really dramatically change.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, you know about neighborhood as refuge even more than I do. Yeah.
So you've been there since 2005. What do you love about Bed-Stuy now? What are your favorite things?
The restaurant scene is amazing.
Is it?
Right? We have an Italian wine bar that I don't drink wine, but they have pastries and coffees, and that's always great. Japanese Mexican 3 blocks down, Japanese French 5 blocks away. We have great wood-fired oven pizza 4 blocks. I mean,
And transportation?
I'm a
back and
block and a half from the A.
Right.
When I bought my house, I intentionally told the agent that the Craigslist agent, oh, I cannot live more than 5 minutes walking, 1.5 minutes running from the train.
Of course.
And this was literally a block and a half away.
great.
It fit my 1 minute running.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great. A quick browse through your website. I mean, you've done some incredibly high-end projects. Seems like you had some great budgets to work with and done some incredible things for A-list clients, right? So I encourage everybody to go to your website and look at your work for inspiration.
Thank you.
But what advice can you bring to kind of the average New Yorker that maybe doesn't have the budget to hire an interior designer to have a better space and be happier in their home?
Right. I mean, I think you would decorate your house just like the way I've decorated mine, right? The most personal and intimate space that I have. And what I would tell clients or, your listeners certainly, or anyone, don't buy things just to fill a space. Don't go to Home Goods. Do not just get things that are mass market because, I need something to put on my shelf. That is the worst thing you can do.
Right.
One, you should only buy things, and I really mean you should, only buy things that are going to be useful, that you're going to actually have some kind of utility in your life, right? And for that end, for example, like when I was just in Mexico, I'd made a decision, what am I going to do? And I thought, I'm going to take my old clothes there that need repair. I'm going to get someone to fix them. And that way I'll be using something that's meaningful, right? And then not bringing back new things into my life that's just going to take up more space in my closet. And I met this amazing woman who on the little holes on some of my favorite 20-year-old T-shirts, she embroidered leaves on them. So now it's like, it has even more history and even more meaning. And in that sense, when you decorate your home again, it should have meaning, So in addition to that utility, you don't need to buy a lot.
So every object should be something that means something to you.
Personal.
As a story.
Yep. Otherwise, you're just consuming in culture and consumption, rather. You're just consuming in consumption like some kind of blind mouse in a maze.
Right.
We all deserve better than that. And you can tell when people actually have been thoughtful versus, I just got all this stuff.
Right.
It's really apparent to me immediately. Whether it's good. I usually see it in people's art a little bit more, but even with their furniture, get vintage. Vintage is amazing. I mean, while I just got featured by IKEA, I would definitely say vintage, under 100 years old, and antique over 100 years. There are Louis XVI chests now that are cheaper than you can get at Crate and Barrel.
Right.
That's insane, right?
So do you shop a lot of vintage for your clients?
We do for the ones that want it, and even for the ones who say we want full contemporary.
Right.
I always tell them, your overall house interior will not age as it would if everything was bought in 2023. I think you see this a lot more in women's fashion than in men's, right? But if a woman buys everything from this year and it's of the moment, you can pinpoint, hey, that dusty pink that was so popular just before COVID, that was 2019, right? But if you go ahead and you choose classic pieces or things that again, have meaning to yourself and everything isn't modern, 20 years from now, your house won't look like the dusty pink T-shirt.
Yeah.
And then you'll be happy with it, and then you'll spend less money. So, we talked about this at one point. Save your money. Buy real estate. Buy a real house. Don't just throw your money away buying another Louis Vuitton bag.
You said something to luxury What did you say the other day? Luxury is the ability to not spend money or something
Right,
like that.
right. I mean, the luxury.
Saving is a luxury.
Saving is a luxury that many people cannot do. But I do feel, but when you can do it and you can afford it, don't buy things. Usually it's the initial frisson, right?
Yeah.
When you get something, oh my God, I got it. And then it's just going to collect dust and you don't need it. And I'm very guilty of that. I want to make sure that when I'm speaking about this, people know, like, I've been the first person to have made all these mistakes. I'm hoping people can learn from my mistakes and not do the stupid things that I did.
Right.
I mean, I did save a lot of money, obviously, right? But I also feel like I see a lot of people not doing that. And then they complain to me, I don't have enough money. I'm like, well, remember when you went drinking every single week? I remember when you bought all that stupid designer stuff that now you don't use or you can't use. You could have had a house by now.
Yeah.
And as we get older and older, the amount of money that gets lost to that kind of silly behavior, again,
Consumerism,
but buy a house. And I'm not just saying this because we're on a real estate podcast talking about life in New York. I'm saying this because it is your home.
Sure.
Have a home. If you're fortunate enough to be able to buy all these things, wait.
Yeah.
And then it'll be something that you'll be proud of. And then if you're lucky or if you're thoughtful about it, it'll be an investment that'll serve you in your retirement so you can, travel all over the world and have fun.
So buy the place first, and then if it takes you 10 years to furnish it, that's okay.
Absolutely. And in those 10 years, especially in the New York market, unless you're in a weird anomaly, in 10 years, that place lately, I think it's been outperforming the stock market, right? Like a lot of certainly Brooklyn and Queens.
In the last 10, 15 years, yes.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine all that. All the money that it earned, me just living there. Like New York is not like Hawaii. New York is not like New Jersey and New York City.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to move here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The market only keeps going up because we're not making more land,
It's
baby.
one of the safest investments in the world.
It really is. So aren't you and I glad that we did this? A little bit of gloating there, audience. Sorry.
I wanted to talk to you about Hawaii because you're from Hawaii,
Right.
right? And I think another key to having a great life in New York City is kind of tapping into, when you're able to, tapping into like an expat community to where you come from. Have you been able to do that? Is there a Hawaiian community here that you tap into?
Yeah, I am exceptionally fortunate. I went to a K through 12 school called Punahou, and it's probably, I've never seen another alumni network for a high school like this yet. And we all get together, whether it's going to, various alumni, whether it's going to be Tokyo, New York, LA, Dallas, alumni of various years get together. And I have met some really fantastic friends who share, I think, many of the same cultural sensibilities that I do, who certainly look at community service with the same kind of intensity and importance.
Because you're very involved with charity also, aren't you?
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. I am. And I just feel like it's been very healing and very mind-opening for me to see how much I do have, even when I think I don't, right? As we talked about saving, and not doing things. I'm very fortunate. And so to have this network of support means that I can really look at my life with a lot more stability and then give back to others. So
Right.
it is really lucky. And, not everybody.
So how does that really manifest? Like, so you went to this school.
Yeah.
So they have like temporary, do they have frequent events?
They do in New York. They have a whole alumni office, and President Obama went there. The head of AOL, the head of eBay. I mean, it's pretty insane. One of my classmates is Carrie-Ann Inaba, who's on Dancing with the Stars. I mean, it's not. These are not abnormal accomplishments. I think we have 1 or 2 Olympians in my class.
Wow.
It's kind of insane. So
it's probably where you gained a background for working with kind of A-list clients.
yeah, I'm from a very lower middle class background, but when you work with people who are, featured, these families who come from that movie, The Descendants, right, which is also about our school, you realize what it means to be middle class, how to navigate yourself in a world where people have more money than they know what to do with.
Right.
Influence where, their families, like Dole Pineapple, one of the school's missionary founders. I mean,
it's a different way of thinking.
It's
and,
a
and,
whole
and
different way.
different priorities. Yeah.
But I think, and again, when you come to New York, right, it's helpful to have that skill set, because if you do want to be able to make your life better, it obviously is conducive to your life's betterment if you work with people who do have that kind of money. Obviously, you're not choosing your friends because of that kind of money. But when you can do that, I know for me, it's resulted in many clients from my school, from their friends, strictly because of the fact that we share values. So when you talk about that kind of network, I think the kind of network you have is also meaningful. It should be sincere. It should be real. And then to me, the best ones are where you can reciprocate with community service and join with people. And I'm going to Hawaii back home for our school carnival. I think it raises $1.4 million in 2 days, and it entirely goes to scholarship. And we had a class of 400. It's the largest private school in the country. I would say usually at least 40 kids will come back and from various places and go volunteer. So it's something I'm grateful to be a part of.
Wow. Sounds great. And what are a couple of the charities that you're currently involved with that are important to you?
Right. So right now I'm on the board of Womankind, and we're an agency that deals with domestic violence and work and sex slavery survivors in New York. It's actually a big problem. I thought this was, who's really getting served by this? But one of my Punahou girlfriends said, Jared, it's a real deal. And I've been involved in fundraising before for National Minority AIDS Council, for gay rights, the Smithsonian. So I brought in some of that skill set. And now, we rebranded the agency. We're helping look at a new SEO, which we've joked about, right? A new SEO awareness program, not only for fundraising, but for external relations for the community, so they know we're available as a resource. Because for a lot of women and some men, when you come here and English is not your first language, it might be Spanish, it might be Mandarin, it might be some really obscure dialect in the middle of Vietnam, we actually have people who speak those languages, understand that culture, and can then help them with that trauma in a way that's going to be sensitive to their own background. And it's been very satisfying for me. And again, the Punahou thing, Punahou classmates, there are 3 of us on that board of 12. So yeah.
That's great. Wow.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to hear how you've, in 20 years, created an amazing life in New York City.
I am really grateful. I'm really fortunate. This was not what I thought. I'd wanted things like this to be able to help others, to have a house that I would work in and live in, and to have all this happen. You hope for the best, and you plan for it. But, that's not how life works. You never know what you're going to get. No. Yeah. But I do feel like for a lot of people who are New Yorkers, like you and me, I would say that if you're don't you think, if you're persistent, you pretty much get what you want in New York. Yeah. Right? Short of me becoming like, an heir to the duty-free fortune.
I think if you're persistent and work through the problems, you solve it and get to the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's unique about New York, I think, is how many people are willing to give you a chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
My own career.
And you're what I love about New York is you're able to constantly reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
And just say like, you know what? This is who I am now. And everybody's like, okay, great.
Right.
Like, nobody cares.
Right. It's actually really true. And I think like my own story when I came here to do fundraising for Vice President Gore, and I said, I'm done. Right. This is depressing, raising money for people who don't seem to care, about winning or losing and thinking about power. Politics can be really great, and sometimes it can't be. It's like watching sausage get made. You don't want to see it get made. And I told some of my donors, and they're like, okay, Jarrett, we're going to find you a job in design. they got me interviews with like Vera Wang and all these crazy like high-end people. And then I got a job as an interior designer.
Because they saw something in you.
Yeah, and which is insane, right? Here I am, this relatively young adult, right, in my early 30s, wanting to reinvent myself, as you said, right? So like everyone else coming to New York, I'm going to reinvent myself. And then I became an interior designer. And then 2 years later, the editor-in-chief and creative director of W and Women's Wear Daily, right, which is like the Wall Street Journal for fashion, said, Jarrett, I want you to start your own firm, and I'm going to follow you. And I thought, like, are you crazy? I've been doing this for 2 years. You can. He's like, he was BFS with Karl Lagerfeld. Like, you see pictures of him with Ralph and Donna Karan. I mean, when people, the first name basis for all the designers, he actually knew them, and they actually knew his first name. And he's telling me to start my own firm. The head of PR for Vogue then said, yeah, Jarrett, go start your own firm. I'll follow you too. And I'm like, there's not a suspension of disbelief, but it was just disbelief to hear that. And they had to threaten me to leave. They actually said, if you don't go, we're going to find someone else. And I'm like, okay. I mean, what are you going to tell those people no?
Of course not.
And
Sounds like a great opportunity.
But it is, I think, while this is the extreme side of a New York opportunity, I think this can be true for many people. Yeah. So, yeah, not just me.
So I want to give one last piece of advice. I want to hear one last piece of advice from you before we sign off here.
Yeah.
So what is your advice for how to have a big life in New York City?
That's so interesting, right? I think when we think about the word big, I really think about the word, to me, is like satisfied. Yeah. I feel like if you come here knowing that you're going to meet other people who love doing what you love doing, who have the same passion as you, and right, like I know this one woman who helps to run auctions at Sotheby's. It doesn't matter what it is. If they're passionate about what they're doing, you create this amazing community around you, and it's just inspiring. And so that would be my advice, would just be to be who you are. You may not even know when you move here who you are. Right. But New York is, it's like they put
allow it to find you.
Right. It's like you're a rough diamond, and you're gonna get put into that machine that tumbles you around, and it's gonna be chaotic. But then you come out fabulous
shiny.
Later.
Yeah.
Shiny baby.
That's right.
That's
shiny and sharp.
Yeah, and that. Sure. Oh God, yeah. So that is true, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what New York is. But you have to be willing to be in the tumbler.
Diamond tumbler.
It is. Yeah. But you're gonna come out in a way that doesn't resemble who you were when you first arrived, when you first come in, and you're gonna be grateful. And hopefully, you can then use the many gifts that were given to you along this path, and then return it to others who are less fortunate. Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome.
That's
it.
I
love that. Okay. Thank you so much for being on the show. It was great talking to you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jarrett.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.